Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the joint hearing of the House Transportation Finance and Transportation Policy Committees. I'm State Representative Frank Hornstein, Chair of the Transportation Finance Committee. I'd like to welcome everybody today. This is our first in a series of overview hearings, and because MnDOT is one of our most important state agencies dealing with transportation, we wanted to do this hearing jointly with the Policy Committee. So the only agenda item was really the overview of MnDOT, and we're very happy to have Commissioner Zelle with us. Before we start, I just wanted to call your attention to some information in your packets about a seminar that we are going to be having at the Center for Transportation Studies on Thursday evening, the 31st of January. We are doing this in conjunction with the university because we had several very popular and successful events like this a few years ago for our transportation committees in the House and the Senate as well joining us. It's an opportunity to kind of get away from the hustle and bustle of the state office building in the Capitol and then in a more informal way get to know each other and deal with some topics that I think are really important. Well, 1 minute, Representative Mahoney, I know you have some questions about this. That part of our ongoing effort to, get on the same page in terms of our backgrounds on transportation policy. In addition to the overview hearings, we'll do this and, hear from some of the groups involved. And we're going to have also next week our nonpartisan staff giving our Finance Committee a presentation. So between those four things, we'll get ourselves up to speed on transportation issues. So this is going to start right after session on the 31st. So therefore, we will not be meeting in committee. The Transportation Finance Committee will not be meeting on the 31st of January, but instead going over to the U of M for this very special, I think, and informative seminar. So I wanted to call that to your attention. Representative Mahoney.
No, I'll skip it. I don't want to make the chair mad at me.
Oh, never, Representative Mahoney.
Chair, we'd love to hear what Mr. Mahoney has to say.
Just a little, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Representative Mahoney.
St. Paul had, anytime we asked people to come to our thing last night, it had music, food, party, beverages. You ask us to come to something at the U of M, and it's like, we got to work. I think they need better conditions.
Okay, well, you're a union organizer, Representative Mahoney.
That's my
there is a buffet dinner, and, I'll do that. I'll do a couple impersonations for you. I like to do stand-up, so I'll meet you halfway, Representative Mahoney.
Members, what that means is if you don't show up, he impersonates you.
Okay, with that, are there any questions in addition to that about our... Okay. Well, thank you very much, Commissioner Zelle, for coming today. I know you just started yesterday, so to come over to the legislature on your second day, we're very honored by that, and I know Mr. Peterson will be also a part of the presentation today. So to both of you, welcome to the committee, and when you begin your presentations, please state your name and titles for the record, and we'll start with our overview of the Minnesota Department of Transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman Hornstein. Again, it's true. I am Charlie Zelle. I am Commissioner of the Department of Transportation, and it is day 2. So I appreciate the fact that maybe having an overview of transportation for many members of the committee will be also helpful for me, because I also am learning more about the details of this agency. I have been a great appreciator of it as an outsider in the private sector, but now it is really a great honor to be leading what I think is really a world-class agency in the state of Minnesota. And I want to acknowledge that Deputy Commissioner Bernie Arsenault, who had intended to be here and has been the acting commissioner for the past couple of months, had some chest pain and came back early from a Transportation Research Board meeting in Washington where he was receiving an award for the state of Minnesota 2 days ago, and he's undergoing surgery today. So so I'm so sorry he is unable to be here. I think he's going to be fine. I had a chance to talk to him yesterday, and he is lucky to be being able to deal with a medical condition, and he will be back and recovering. But I joked with him that it was cruel to do that on my first day, but quite honestly, we were worried about him, but I think he's so far, I think everything's going well. So I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Couldn't be here.
Certainly our prayers, our thoughts are with Mr. Arsenault and his family, and we also wish him a speedy recovery. Please give him our regards.
I'll do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And also, I am sitting here. Maybe you can introduce yourself now. This is, I hope, will be not a one-way communication. I would really invite you, Mr. Chairman, and your members of the committee to interrupt and ask questions as we kind of move through this presentation. And if you think we're spending too much time on one issue, please tell me to move along. And if you'd like more details, stop us.
Mr. Chairman, members, my name is Scott Peterson. I'm the Director of Government Affairs at MnDOT.
Thank you.
Great. Well, we have a PowerPoint, so we're going to kind of go through. This is, again, an overview of the department. And I always kind of, like to point out that there were highways in Minnesota well before 1976, but it was a highway department, and having come from the bus business that's about 93 years old, I have a family legacy of using these roads when they were dirt. I think they were more than dirt, but they have progressed since then. In 1976, they combined the highway departments with the planning agency and really became more of an overall transportation department, very comprehensive. Policies, plans, programs. It's funny. I think everybody thinks it is just roads, but it is, and it's not more than just roads and transit. It is multimodal. It's every mode within the state, and really the overall idea is that it not just manages the transportation, but tries to manage it in the most efficient ways for the quality of life and economic prosperity of Minnesota, which really gets into the vision and mission. This has been reviewed with a number of different commissioners, and hello, over the years, and I think that there's been a lot of citizen input and legislative input into this vision and mission, and it's exciting. It really is about efficiency and sustainability across modes for the economic and long-term quality of life of our state. You'll see that besides the mission itself, we have several kind of key points. Safety is always on top of the list. Safety is kind of the first priority, both as a strategy and as a value. Mobility is really about citizens. One thing that's wonderful about this agency is that it touches every citizen in the state. And it's really about getting those citizens to their jobs, to their schools, to their health care. I think this agency has had a great history of innovation. Innovation isn't just about new technology. It's about how we use that technology and ways both to perform its work efficiently, but also so that it can provide better service. We've had great leadership throughout the world of transportation and in the state of Minnesota, and that goes beyond MnDOT. Transparency is an important value. I think we're working on that. I think the idea that there's numbers, that there's performance data, and we'll get into ways that the agency has improved metrics that can be shared, so everybody, citizens and legislators, can understand what the agency is doing. So getting to the strategic vision, I talked a little bit about the core values and safety. I would just kind of say overall, rather than read through each one, there is, and I can say this now that I'm 24 hours into this job, but I've known it before, there's a group of dedicated employees within MnDOT. I mean, I have never seen any organization where there's teamwork and really commitment to performing for the citizens' best interest. There's everything from diversity and cultural capital that is really part of the core culture of the agency. And I think that, by and large, my understanding is they're pretty high scores of folks that work there. When you think about the strategic vision of why MnDOT exists, I'm going to go back to that idea of economic prosperity for everybody in the state and the quality of life. I mean, more of the long-term, and we've done this kind of Go Minnesota 50-year vision. It really comes down to the way people see their state and the fact that transportation is kind of one of those kind of core pieces, one of those bedrock foundations, whether it's a business or a lifestyle. I think that we think about strategic visions not just about sustainability and how do we adapt this important infrastructure into people's lives, but also how it can remain resilient as populations change and as the climate changes and as the world changes. We have to maintain a system that can adapt. And I think now I'm kind of getting into at least how I see it, but I see MnDOT well positioned to help address that. So just a minute on how we're organized. I've been promised that I don't have to take this test to memorize this organizational chart, but I'm getting to know every one of these folks better really over the past month. The commissioner's staff, you can see, is all the district engineers and in areas that support the initiative. There is a chief engineer, and that in this organization is the deputy commissioner. Again, that's Deputy Commissioner Arsenault. But we have everything kind of from programs to engineering, state aid, and then kind of operating divisions. In the planning and program management division, there's it's always I find kind of remarkable that it's not just you think about, well, we plow the roads, but it's a kind of a dual function of planning and everything from transit, aeronautics, passenger rail. So, I haven't really seen, in looking at other states, as comprehensive a program as a kind of that resides within MnDOT. If we look at the state, there's always this kind of balance about what's centralized within MnDOT and what is really in districts. This is a very decentralized agency in terms of the road and bridge repair and construction. There's a district engineer in every one of these districts, and many of the decisions are at the district level. I think we certainly see our role in the central office is there to support those districts and those and the autonomy and the relationships that those district engineers have with their local officials, and yet try to balance it so we do work consistently. But you can see the 8 districts that kind of fit naturally within the state of Minnesota. So just an overview quickly, and I'm saying something that everybody understands, but it's always helpful to know that when it comes to state roads, yes, it's planning, delivery, and construction, but it's also operations and maintenance. Operations and maintenance is more than just snow plowing. I've learned a lot about snow plowing in the past 2 weeks. It was my first question when I was introduced by the governor. It was lucky again, right after a major snowstorm. I know that we don't do salt, anything less than 15 degrees. So, but I'm actually just impressed that we have over 200 snowplows. They're out there doing the job. It's a pretty sophisticated operation. Again, kind of more at the operating at the district level. Includes local roads. There's county municipal aid, state aid that helps support those local roads. Again, I mentioned the multimodal system. Over 100 airports, rural transit, not the metro transit, freight rail, electronic communications I've just been learning about the ARMOR system. Is it? It's really it's the statewide 911 system that runs consistently, and this has been a big effort recently. And I don't know if you want to add any of that.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, for those who don't know, the ARMOR system is the statewide shared public safety radio network that is owned and operated by the Department of Public Safety, but it is being constructed by the Department of Transportation through our electronic communications office.
Thank you.
So just to give you a sense of the scale, roughly 138,000 miles of roadway, and 57 billion annual vehicle miles, 32 billion just on the trunk highways. I mean, this is a pretty robust system for any state. Is there a question I could answer?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr.
Representative
Chair.
Rumsfeld.
I was curious here, do you do anything to kind of segregate passenger miles traveled from commercial vehicles miles traveled? I mean, I've
Mr.
never really
Chairman and
heard that.
Representative, I'm going to defer to Scott Peterson, but may I just say I think that's a great question, because I think the world is now looking more to not just vehicle miles, but really it's about transporting the passengers and passenger miles versus vehicle miles. But I don't know if we've done that.
Mr. Chair, Representative Runbeck, we do track the traffic mix, so what percentage of the traffic that's out there is heavy commercial vehicles versus passenger vehicles. I don't know if we track actual vehicle miles traveled in the same way that we do, just general vehicle miles traveled, but we can definitely get that information for you. If you'd like.
Thank you, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you. Representative Bernardi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Back to the MnDOT services, I just wanted to ask you about the multimodal transportation system. MnDOT's responsible for a bike and pedestrian system as well. Was that an oversight, or how do you feel, is that something that you're going to be working on?
Well, we do non-motorized, excuse me, Mr. Chair, and bicycle paths in greater Minnesota. And I didn't bike here today, but I'm a big advocate for bike lanes. So that absolutely is something that we have been engaged with.
Thank you. Proceed, Commissioner.
Bridges, we're the land of 10,000 lakes, but 13,000 highway bridges, over nearly 3,000 trunk highway bridges, and I said over 100. It's actually 135 state-funded airports, which includes the 7 as part of the MAC system. Water freight, which is obviously major ports. Remarkable that we actually have 5 major water ports in the state of Minnesota. Duluth, well known. Rail freight, which is really increasing, and I think we certainly will be talking about along the way the needs for the capacity issues in rail freight. But in 2010, 243 million tons. Transit, this is the non-metro transit, but 78 greater Minnesota counties with public transit. This is, I think we certainly know as those of us who are aging, there is an increasing need for transit in all areas. And then, of course, we mentioned the bicycle and pedestrian facilities. Yes, that is, again, throughout the state.
Representative Beard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Commissioner, on the transit component here, one of the things that wasn't made clear here over the last couple of years, we've talked about the transit plan for Greater Minnesota, is do we count in the transit mix the private providers, like the company you used to work with, or Trailways, Jackrabbit? I'm thinking of all the little shuttle companies that run from Rochester, Mankato, or Marshall to the Twin Cities and other places. Are they counted in the mix?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Beard. Before I ask Scott what the real answer is, I love that you refer to wonderful old bus company names that haven't been around for 20 years, but they have a glorious history in the state. But I think there is quite a bit of private transportation in addition to these public transit systems, like the airport and the and the private inner-city bus companies. But I don't think they're in this figure. No, they're not.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, if I may, just one observation on bicycle and pedestrian facilities. I know we're very fond of this, some of us really are, but MnDOT taking that responsibility on over its 100 and some years of history as the Highway Department is actually a rather new development, and there is, just for the committee's consideration, there is some discussion or tension over just how that gets paid for, because constitutionally, you know, the fuel tax and the user fees go to roads and bridges. How much we add to a shoulder or something like that for biking, or whether we build a trail on the right-of-way is a good thing, but just know that there is some discussion about how that's financed, paid for, and who does the upkeep on that. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for letting me just make that observation.
Thank you, Representative Beard. Representative Hausman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To that point, is MnDOT the Highway Department or the Transportation Department? And how do you see that?
Commissioner Zelle.
What would be your definition of your mission?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Husband, I would define it as transportation. It is, I think, transportation, and as we kind of think about it, it's a kind of a larger concept that is really multimodal, and it is certainly evolved as you look at kind of our mission and vision from being just get vehicles from here to there, but it has been kind of largely about how we allow mobility for our citizens in all modes, and economic development through business freight, and how it is integrated with our economic prosperity and quality of life. So I think it is wonderful that the name was changed in '76, but it has been evolving ever since that to be a much of a larger concept of what transportation really means.
Thank you.
We were talking about we're at system performance. I might turn to Scott to talk specifically, but there has been a lot of work over the past number of years that has been excellent, particularly in pavement condition, which I think is much better. And we've had some great improvement in our safety records. But rather than just talk about these specific performance metrics, I just kind of noticed, myself looking at the performance, reports over the past couple of years, and something I think we continue to improve upon is how we measure and how we report on our performance, and that'll be maybe a continuing conversation. I think that whenever we have these metrics, it shows what the state of the system is at any one point in time, but it's also very important to consider that roads and bridges and systems are always in a constant state of either getting better or slightly, eroding over time and need constant maintenance. So this is really a moving target, but it's really helpful, I think, for all of us to understand where the investments are going and what impacts they're having. Do you want to add anything?
Mr. Chairman, these performance measures and the information come directly from our results scorecard that we publish every year. And we have a couple of different measures for the physical condition of our infrastructure. The first one refers to bridges that are in poor condition, and we're trying to get that number down to 2%. So 2% of our principal arterial bridges on the trunk highway system would be no more than 2% would be in poor condition. But in terms of bridges that are in good condition, we're actually above our target there, so we're in relatively good shape in terms of the percentage that are in good condition. And we've been making a lot of progress on this as a result of the bridge program that was a part of the funding bill that was passed in 2008. And we have several major bridges that are either under construction or will be under construction in the next couple of years, which will bring this particular performance measure into the green. Kind of the same story with pavements in poor condition. We're in relatively good shape now as a result of some investment programs, including the Better Roads for Better Minnesota program that the governor launched a couple of years ago, and the stimulus funds that came in 2009 have allowed us to really make some progress on that. And Commissioner Zelle referred to an award that the department is receiving or received yesterday from the International Roads Federation for the Better Roads program, and I have a brief video that was prepared to be played at that award ceremony. So when the time is appropriate, Mr. Chairman, I would ask to play that. And fatalities, unfortunately, we had a slight increase in 2012. We'll get to that later on in the presentation, and you can see in the congestion measures below we're making some progress on congestion, but clearly we have some work yet to do when you look at metro freeway congestion.
I think we have a question from Chairman Earhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Peterson, if I remember right, the 2008 bill had a large component of bonding for bridge money. Is that pretty well used up now?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Earhart, I think all the bonds have been committed to projects. If you recall, I think $600 million total was identified specifically to be used only on bridges, but I think we have used much more than that funding in order to meet the targets that were laid out in the program. So some of the bridges I referenced that are either under construction or will be under construction soon are part of that bridge improvement program. So replacing the St. Croix Bridge, the I-90 Bridge down in southeastern Minnesota, the Lafayette Bridge, the Hastings Bridge, and the Winona Bridge are among that group.
Thank you.
Yes, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jim Newberger, House District 15B. Thank you for coming here this morning. I had a quick question, if you could please educate me on this. Where does MnDOT stop and the Met Council start? I'm looking at these. I'm seeing some who has jurisdiction over what. How does that formula work? I know that federal dollars come into the Met Council specifically for transportation issues. I know that it says here in your paperwork that you also receive a large share of federal funding as well for your department. When that initial money comes, who determines which group gets what, and what is the relationship between MnDOT and the Met Council? I would like some just a little clarification on that, please. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
This would be the test. See if I get this right, Mr. Chair. I think basic idea is that highways through the Federal Highway Department, through state trunk bonds, are all kind of MnDOT and throughout the metro and the entire state. Transit, although it has a great component in greater Minnesota with MnDOT, the transit component is really handled by the Metropolitan Council, and that manages the metro transit planning and the operations and development. Having said that, there still is MnDOT planning component, which is integrated throughout the entire state, including the urban area. And my view is that transportation is not really as siloed as it once was. That when you think about 394 or 35 or any kind of transportation corridor, it involves a combination of transit and road, and so the relationship between MnDOT and Met Council is a very important one, and one that needs to be kind of closely integrated. But maybe, Mr. Peterson, you can give us the specific definition of how they are separate.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Newberger, one thing I would just add to what Commissioner Zelle said is that under federal regulations associated with the receipt of surface transportation funds from the federal government, we are required to work with the Metropolitan Planning Organization as defined in those regulations. And for the metro area, that is the Met Council. And so for identifying and prioritizing investments in the state highway system within the metropolitan area, we're required to coordinate closely with the Met Council, and so they have some authority to influence where those investments on the highway system occur in the metro area.
Representative Newberger.
So who, in the ranking of things, who is senior when it comes to, when you get this, when push comes to shove, okay, who has the final say? Does MnDOT or does the Met Council? And Mr. Peter, I just a point of clarification. Do your best if you can.
Well, in my experience, and this isn't my attempt to put a glossy face on this, but we've worked very closely with the Met Council, and I don't know, at least in my experience, that we've had to come down to who has the ability to kind of shove something through that the other entity doesn't like. So beyond that, I don't really know, but we can find that out for you if you'd like, if there is some provision in there that basically allows, for example, MnDOT then to supersede the authority of the Met Council in some of these areas. I'm not entirely clear on that.
And
Thank you.
Representative Newberg, do you have another question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to know what the clarification of how the hierarchy of things went between the two organizations. So what you're saying is that there really isn't a hierarchy, or there isn't a set of parameters that you follow? It's case by case, or?
Mr. Chair, Representative Newberger, we actually we work very closely with the Met Council in developing the Metro Area Investment Plan, and that investment, and this is primarily for the use of federal funds, and that plan has to be approved by the Transportation Advisory Board, or TAB, in the metro area, and adopted by the Met Council before we can invest in it. So, and at least that's the way that we've operated. Again, I'm not sure if there are provisions in there that I'm unaware of that would allow us to push that ahead, but I mean, we can track that down. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I think, members, the first part of Representative Newberger's question is an important one as it relates to federal funding. And so I think fully up to 20%, I think, of MnDOT's road and bridge budget is federal. And, you know, when it comes to transit corridors, for example, 50% of that Met Council funding is federal. So we're going to spend some time later in the month and early February talking about the federal role in all of this. So I'm glad you raised that. Representative Bernardi, I saw your hand.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Peterson and Commissioner. I think that's a very good idea to come back with us with what the laws and the guidance are, because I know there's a lot of the commissioners shall, and there's a lot of leadership responsibility. I think it'd be really important that that's very clear and transparent, and that everybody here understands it as well as within MnDOT. So thank you.
And also, thank you, Representative Bernardi. Also, so tomorrow we will have the Met Council and a couple of other transit entities in the metropolitan area presenting, so we can raise that question with them as well. Okay, proceed, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before I move on, is it okay to play this video on the Better Roads program at this point?
Yes. How long is?
It's just a couple minutes long.
Okay. Well, after the video, we probably want to pick in the pace a little bit, but I do.
Nations around the world face many competing needs and limited resources to meet the expectation of delivering a safe and sustainable transportation system for its citizens. In Minnesota, infrastructure improvement is one of the most critical issues facing the state's transportation system. Extreme weather, the age of the system, and competing investment needs results in roads that are in great need of maintenance and improvement. In 2011, 750 miles of Minnesota's highways were classified as being in poor condition. Despite dedicated pavement investments, the miles in poor condition were projected to steadily increase to 1,900 miles by the year 2020. The impending decline of pavements would negatively impact the state's economy and Minnesotans' quality of life. In response, the Minnesota Department of Transportation worked with Governor Mark Dayton and the Minnesota Legislature to establish better roads for a better Minnesota. You might ask how Minnesota made this happen. MnDOT conducted a risk analysis of investment levels in pavements, bridges, safety, mobility, and regional and community priorities. The result of this risk analysis determined preserving pavements to be the highest risk for the department and led to the development and implementation of the Better Roads program. Now you're probably wondering, where did the money come from? To start, funding for the program did not require any increase in revenue. Instead, funding came from current state and federal funds, in addition to previously authorized bonds. By employing new innovations in design and construction, MnDOT has been able to save money on recent projects. In addition, the department explored market conditions and identified cost efficiencies to free up capital resources. Traditionally, MnDOT selects projects based on the lowest bid, but for Better Roads, MnDOT used an alternative bid process to select projects that contained a lower life cycle cost rather than a lower upfront cost. MnDOT's Materials Lab and Road Research Facility provide a testing ground for innovative engineering and delivery techniques that result in pavement materials that are sustainable and have longer life cycles. So, what does the Better Roads program get us? A sustainable and efficient way to address MnDOT's highest risk investment area, smoother rides on more than 700 miles of Minnesota highways, and a transportation system that remains economically competitive and improves quality of life. Better roads for a better Minnesota.
Thank you. And I actually do have a question related to this video, and I guess it's the second bullet point on system performance. There was a study, I believe, that was presented to our committee last year. Representative Beard will recall this, about the pavement, I would say, crisis in the state. And so that you have the 1,900 miles by 2020. How much will it cost in additional revenue to address that? So you have 700 miles that have been completed. What about this remaining 1,900 miles of pavement projected to be in poor condition by 2020? What's the plan for addressing that?
Mr. Chairman, the best of my recollection, I think it's about $4 billion. I'm just guessing. It would be better if I were to go back and get that answer specifically and respond. But
Okay.
that's my recollection.
2020.
Yeah, right.
So it'd be helpful to get a little better sense of the
Excuse me.
problem and then the funding gap that exists in addressing it.
Right.
Representative Hausman and Representative Runbeck after that.
And to that point, I'm just going to lay an issue on the table, and it's not probably for them to do now because they've got a big
Right.
presentation, but sometime it just seems to me that MnDOT probably needs to help us with this because they operate with insufficient funds and because the congestion is great and the needs are great and the pressure from lots of parts of the state are. I think for legislators, they begin to come to the legislature as though we can legislate, that we can pass bills, sometimes because they come to capital investment. And so I think there needs to be maybe an explanation from the department about how we have not used geo-bonding from that perspective and can't and why. But the other is that I think more and more legislators with bills think they can come directly to MnDOT or the legislature advancing a highway. And I confess, my own county is doing it right now. I know they've been in your offices and make an argument about a congestion or safety or economic development need. And I think we need some discussion as a committee at some point about our role in partnering with MnDOT in educating our colleagues and figuring out how we deal with that increased pressure. So it's maybe for discussion at another time and probably doesn't fit today, but it does seem to me it's an emerging issue that we ought to just sort of address candidly.
Okay. Thank you. Representative Runbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair and Commissioner, now I just wanted to clarify, we have 137,000 miles of roadway, and we have 1,900 miles in poor pavement condition. Are those the correct numbers?
Commissioner or Mr. Peterson?
Mr. Chair, Representative Runbeck, we'll get you the detailed information. I don't have that information at my fingertips here, but we have done quite a bit of work on that to try to develop kind of a comprehensive look at the highway system and what type of pavement work needs to be done. And so we'll get that information to all the members of both committees.
I have Representative Benson, Representative Earhart, Representative Mahoney, and then I would, after these set of questions, then we'll keep going. So, Representative Benson, there you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To our guests, I guess I was led by the video to understand that they were kind of what ifs, that if we didn't do anything, we knew we had 750, but yet we would project that we had 1,900, but that the new program mitigated that. So I guess I was left with the impression that we've made some substantial gains by the program, and in my thought at least, that we wouldn't have 1,900 miles. Can you kind of explain if that's a misperception, and if indeed that program worked as well as I thought it showed, to your credit, what is the new projection?
Mr. Peterson.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Benson, we'd be happy to come back and talk about this particular topic in more detail if the committee would appreciate that. But I think with our pavements, what we're seeing is that we have a lot of roadways that have a lot of age on them. And what's characteristic of pavement decay is that if you don't fix them at the appropriate time, the rate of decay increases, which means the cost of repair increases kind of geometrically. And so it's true that we did take care of a substantial amount of our roadway pavements, but of the approximately 12,000 miles of highway out there, there are still a number more that our pavement management system projects to be in need of repair in the upcoming years along the lines of the numbers that you've heard. So I think that's kind of what the picture is for the pavements on our trunk highway system in general.
A follow-up, Representative Benson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I can't speak for everyone else on the two committees, but I mean, certainly I see the need to make sure that our roadways are repaired in a timely and safe manner and so on. But this is a finance committee, and when we begin looking at the scope of the work that needs to be done, and when we throw out numbers like 1,900 miles and so on, and if they're not accurate, then will lead us to make decisions that possibly are not good for our citizenry. So I would like some answers to that, certainly not this morning, but in future opportunities.
Thank you. And Representative Benson, this is, I think, has been an interest of the committees over the years. I know we had, I think, a whole day, Representative Beard, devoted to the pavement study. And so I will very likely, sometime in February, we will devote some committee time specifically to this question. Clearly, given the questions that have just come up as a result of the video, we do need to get the questions answered, and it is a really critical central issue before the agency and before the state. So we will spend time, rest assured, in this committee getting into some of the more details. So I appreciate your questions about that.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair and Representative, I mean, I think we really do look forward to kind of going deeper and giving you a better forecast as to what we're looking at and to what economic or cost advantage the Better Roads program is. But clearly it's a moving, as every year it erodes, so it's a moving target.
Thank you, and I think especially for our newer members and maybe some of the veterans who maybe in the process of moving offices recycled the study or don't have access to it, I'll see if we can have Mr. Scheer send some kind of a link to it. This is the pavement study that MnDOT did in, I believe, 2011, so that all of you can have that as a basis to look through, because that'll provide a lot of details, and I think some of the questions that have been asked may be answered just in looking at that pavement study. Representative Earhart, and then we'll move on with the presentation.
Not today, but I think we always used to have a 10 or 20-year plan with the expected revenues from current sources and the needs spelled out in no uncertain terms, so we could figure out how much we're going to give you, if anything. And I would assume that would be forthcoming here, not today, but soon.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I believe we had another question from Representative Mahoney.
No, that's fine.
Okay. So, members, what I'd like to do is we're a little under halfway through the PowerPoint. Let's get through it, and then I think we can get that done by about 11:25, 11:30, if not earlier, and then we can spend the last 15 minutes on questions.
Okay.
Proceed.
We're just moving to the accomplishments, and these are really the accomplishments. Again, this is a high-level overview of 2012. When there is a light snow year, which there was last year, there were more repairs to the roadway that were conducted. So that was just the nature of available resources that were put into the infrastructure Clearly, this was a year with some major floods. Quite a bit of work done, Northfield, Cannon Falls, and then Duluth, I think we all have heard about. Some of that reconstruction and work had been on the plan, but farther years ahead. So this is work that was done this year. You can see the snow and ice expenditures that it really does change depending on the year, and we're not quite sure where 2013 is, but it certainly started out where it's with probably higher cost. More accomplishments this year. I think we've already mentioned some of the work on the bridges, but these are probably the areas of major investment. I'm just going to kind of move through fairly quickly, unless there's well, we can talk about questions later. We talked about safety accomplishments. There was a slight uptick, but you can see over the course of a number of years, this 2-0 death initiative has had a major impact. And there's kind of multiple initiative in order to make this accomplishment. Some of it's the actual capital expenditure on the roadways, but a lot of it is trying to change driver behavior. So, as it says, we've got the AASHTO Safety Leadership Award for driving down fatalities. It's actually a program that MnDOT developed that has become a national model, and other states are picking it up. In Greater Minnesota Transit, you can see most counties do have the Greater Minnesota Transit service through both federal and state grants. But by statute, we are not there in terms of meeting the 80% or 90% by 2025. So we'll have more details for you later, but there are some areas without service, and there's 8 counties with municipal service only. And that kind of map shows it. In other modal accomplishments, a major track upgrade, nearly $5 million, was completed. And then planning continues on passenger rail corridors, as well as the St. Paul Union Depot, which is up and running. And then, of course, the transportation interchange is under construction. In aeronautics, again, quite a few grants. I believe the Duluth Airport opened yesterday. Ribbon cutting. There was, again, quite a bit of investment for freight, both for rail and and when you think about the amount of truck traffic, this is something we kind of look at, the amount of truck traffic that's in many ways coming through our state. We are clearly looking at the development of the oil regions, of the Bakken area and North Dakotas, and as they come to their markets, guess what? They come through Minnesota. So it's another area that we're looking at. So I kind of talk about some of the initiatives in the key strategic categories. You know, those categories: safety, mobility, innovation, leadership, and transparency. And just to kind of give you a sense of what we call kind of our major flagship kind of investment areas. So you got a sense of what activities we're doing in these key areas. And then the first area, safety, we talked a little bit about the 2-0 deaths initiative. Again, as I mentioned, it's not just engineering roads with like little side strip or guardrails. It involves education, enforcement, and emergency medical services. We work and collaborate with other agencies to public safety in particular to accomplish that. Another key initiative, safe routes to schools. We're funding to community and school groups to make it safe. And MnDOT, again, collaborated with other agencies and communities to make some accomplishments in that area. And ADA implementation, this is a huge kind of comprehensive statewide initiative. Again, involved not just capital work like curb cuts, but huge amounts of training. Again, with other units of government. We talk about the multimodalism. I think this agency is working far better at kind of integrating those modes. So when you're working on a road, we are using an example of Snelling Avenue. It's not just the road, but at how it works with pedestrians in particular, and working with those with disabilities. So I think the agency is doing a better job, and it's certainly an objective to take a broader view of transportation. Performance-based design. This is, we talk about high ROI. You know, I think certainly coming from the private sector, and now we hear about a lot in the public sector, return on investments, and it is increasingly becoming the guiding principle behind how we invest funds. And I think we touched on it a little bit, but you know, when there's a $5 million investment versus a $1 million investment, when there's scarce resources, we have to try to find that $1 million investment which really has the greatest impact. We are able to leverage both technology and some of our kind of best practices to kind of get to that point. I'm just kind of touching on a few things, but expanding MnPass system is, again, I mentioned, is a great kind of confluence of both transit and roadways, but it also is a way to get the highest return in terms of increased mobility without having to add an entire lane, as an example. So it's a case of how you use scarce resources efficiently. Do you want to add any more to that? No? Keep going? All right. Another key initiative, our workforce and DBE collaborative, how we kind of work with not just our own workforce, but our contractors to not just reflect the current demographic, but what we would see is the next generation's demographic. This is an ongoing initiative, and I have to say I had the great pleasure of meeting with Commissioner Lindsay before I started to kind of get a sense, and I think this is something that MnDOT has to face in our own best interest about our workforce to try to recruit and the next generation of folks to this agency. So it's kind of a longer-term issue, and I think it's not just the right thing. It is an important thing for us to take seriously. We do that by not just setting targets, but by really starting farther back in the process, by engaging partners to get more people into the pipeline of talent, and as we do training and bring people in. And I think I say I'm personally looking forward to kind of working on that. Innovative finance. We could spend the rest of the afternoon talking about this, but there are certainly opportunities for us to think of ways to both leverage existing streams of revenue, but also areas of value through private public partnerships. We do have some good examples, and I think we can think of more in the future of ways to leverage both public resources and maybe private resources. We can think of areas where some businesses are, and we certainly know of some examples where they're investing in the infrastructure because it is in their best interest. So we will be certainly looking at more opportunities to kind of think out of the box in terms of how we finance our infrastructure. The MAP 21 workshop, this is the reauthorization. It seems like we're always in a state of thinking about the next federal reauthorization bill that's coming up again soon, but MAP 21 really made some changes in terms of policy, less earmarks, more ways we work with our federal partners, and MnDOT had took a leadership role in helping to educate and understand about how we approach federal funding differently from maybe the way it had been done in the past. Innovative construction solutions. I think, we think about MnDOT as being a leading innovator, but we're always looking at ways to find our best practice, both from other states and also from the private sector. We've found some great examples of how we can build bridges faster and more efficiently, and certainly the Maryland and Hastings bridges have, they're great, examples of, wow, we actually built these bridges and then put them into place, and we have a great video probably. I don't know if you want to show those, but probably don't have time. But I mean, it is even for a non-bridge guy, I get excited watching these videos and see how they're building today, where we couldn't have even dreamed of it 10 years ago.
Mr. Chair, we do have videos of the movement of both of these bridges if the committee would be interested in doing. Again, they're very short.
I think we're doing okay. We've made up some time. So how long are
I don't know. Very short.
Okay, let's cue them up and play them.
Mr. Chair, hopefully they do the Maryland one. I watched actually as they built it off-site about 150 yards from it. And then I didn't have enough time to watch them move it because this will have to be a sped-up version.
We have a time-lapse process here. You don't have to.
This
was a 24-hour
the contractor to move a bridge deck with the SPMT, self-propelled modular transporter. So this morning we picked it up with the self-propelled modular, the machine behind me with all the tires on it, picked it up, moved it onto the highway, and later today we're going to move it down to the bridge pier and abutments. We have an advantage that it is a safer situation for the workers and for the traveling public. One, for the workers, they don't have the risk of traffic underneath the bridge as they're building it. It is safer for the public also, not having something above them being constructed. Another advantage that we have is a bridge like this normally takes over 100 days from the time you take it down to the time that you open traffic. This bridge, from the time we take the bridge down to the time we open traffic, will be completed in 60 days. The other impact that we have is on 35E. There's going to be less lane closures because the bridge wasn't built over traffic.
This technology will work out well here. We have additional right-of-way with the Maryland Avenue truck station along 35E that we were able to build the bridge in the bridge farm, or the bridge staging area as we call it with this project, and have the room to roll it in. We were successful in securing some federal funds to help with the additional cost for trying out this technology here. With these federal funds we were able to try this out. It will help us understand some of the challenges of using this technology and applying lessons learned to future projects where we might be using it again.
At MnDOT, we have this vision for our agency and our state. We want to be a global leader and have a world-class transportation system in our state. And a key part of that is innovation and how we use innovation. And that's what this really represents. It's our first attempt to do this. And it'll represent this concept of innovation that we want to instill in our culture and the community in our state. And I think that's what this is.
Everything's worked pretty well. We did this job on design build. The contract was very good. We haven't had any major problems, and so far we are still on track to open up in 60 days.
A self-propelled modular transporter will also be used in Hastings to bring the new tide arch main span of the Hastings Bridge onto the barges in the Mississippi River. Then the barges will float that main span into place.
Well, you know, when we bring these concepts forward, any kind of innovation like this, sometimes there's a little angst about it, but what we've learned today and seen today, there's tremendous cooperation to make this successful. We all want to make this succeed. We all want to see this continue as part of our programs in the future. And again, it's a critical piece of our commitment to innovation.
Let's quickly queue up this other one, Mr. Chair.
I like seeing Commissioner Zelle with his hat. I want you to know when I first showed up, I have my orange hat and my orange vest, so I'm ready.
You're ready to go.
But that was really
I don't have the popcorn, but thanks for letting us show those videos. I think it really kind of shows something that not only saves cost, but it really the major cost of not having a bridge be down that long and much safer. And so that just wasn't possible 10 years ago.
Yeah. Great. Thank you for that.
Then moving along, there's a couple of other key initiatives I want to mention. Example, the Highway 14 safety project was really about, again, not the major investment, but the smart investment to have resulting in fewer accidents and having both increased enforcement and then the 8-foot buffer in the center with rumble strips has again made a difference. The TFAC was actually the 19-member committee that began last year. I had the great honor of actually serving on that committee, and I must say it was really a very robust experience. We had not only legislators, but business leaders, economists, union, local government, and it really went pretty deep into a lot of the areas that you're focusing on, and in terms of exploring a variety of assessing the need long term, and then where is the most realistic sources of funding. So there is a full report, and I'm sure you have it. If you don't, we'll provide it for you. And we expect in MnDOT to help at least explain more over the next few months what is meaningful about the Finance Committee report.
And thank you. And Commissioner, we don't have a specific date yet, and we can discuss it more, but probably in the next few weeks, Senator Dibble and I would like to have a joint hearing of both of our committees, very exclusively around the TFAC. We think it's that important. So hopefully we'll see you or someone from that committee again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd be delighted, and I think we would welcome the opportunity to go in. In fact, I know that some of the other members of this committee outside of MnDOT would be willing to kind of give you their thoughts as well.
Well, we'll work with you on that hearing.
Yeah, thank you. The HUTD sources and uses. This is, when you think about where's the funding come from, and this is really the main diagram, I think, for your committee. Clearly, the main source of funding is gas tax, but cab fees, motor vehicle sales tax are all part of what goes into the highway user tax distribution fund, which is pretty much of a set formula, I believe. Yes, and I think the diagram speaks for itself. But this is when you think about the transportation finance system, and in particular roadways, this is really the formula that MnDOT lives by. And then here's the total kind of forecast. Again, this is pretty high level funding, nearly $6 billion when you consider not just the construction, but the operations, debt service, and associated with the transportation budget.
And members, thank you. Members, we'll also be looking at this very closely on the Finance Committee side next week with our nonpartisan staff. So certainly if you have questions about this, feel free to ask them today, but we're really going to have a very, very focused conversation. I know Mr. Lee and Mr. Burris are hard at work on their PowerPoint for that.
Right, so this is just a very 40,000 feet level view. Bonding, of course, also a very important source of funding, as well as general obligation bond. And again, I won't get into the details, but understanding that there's multiple sources, and certainly trunk bonds, meaning capital bonds associated with highways, is a very important source of our capital budget. You can see where trunk highway debt service has grown or is projected to grow. That's a different, yeah. Okay, right? Same thing. Yeah. And I'm just going to kind of go quickly over the numbers because I know you're going to deal with them later. The federal highway formula to highways, this is really the ratio between what is federal and local federal. And then the construction starts outlook. This again kind of gives both a little bit of an actual, but mostly a projection. You note how we had a bump in 2009, 2010 with a stimulus ARA funding. Then, of course, the role that bonding plays, trunk highway bonding plays. So we just kind of went through the whole thing very quickly. I know we're going to go into greater depth in most of these areas, particularly the financial side, but we really appreciate the opportunity to give you the overview, and we look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, and all of you representatives.
Thank you. Like a MnDOT construction project, we're on schedule here. But no, members, we do have some time, quite a bit of time now for your questions and any discussion. Representative Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions, but I'll start with the funding, but I've got a couple of policy questions that just to get some direction from you. one of the last slides was the ratio of federal highway dollars to state dollars. The sequester that's coming due at the federal level, what's that? Do you have any projections on what that might do to our funding as this committee goes forward? That's really not going to happen for another 60 or 90 days, and huge cuts that might come with it. Is that going to affect the transportation funding?
No, sir.
And if you say yes, I'm going to just go explain that yes.
I'm going to say it's not good, and I'm going to look to say
Mr. Chairman, Representative Mahoney, for our funding that comes through the Federal Highway Trust Fund, which is the revenue that's reflected in the graph that's up on the screen, the vast majority of that will be unaffected by the sequester. The passage of MAP 21 identified a handful of relatively small revenue sources that could be subjected to the sequester, but it should not affect our highway funding or surface transportation funding in the near future as a result of the sequester.
Representative Mahoney.
That seems like it's only part of the answer, but I'm sure you can stop in my office and answer that. Along with your, I would love to find out how you've done the TED funding and what the connection is with the Department of Employment and Economic Development, and what your criteria is for that, for using those particular funds, how you match it up with whether it's a small town or a big town, and one of your slides talks about saving 250 jobs. I think that's an important piece for our committee as we try to figure out whether it's Elbow Lake or Wilmer or St. Paul, how you're making those decisions, because transportation affects economic development. So I would love to find out, and I think maybe hopefully you could speak to the committee about that. But my other one is more of a policy question, and who in your department would I go to? Utah, California have both put together legislation and passed it that deals with the driverless cars. I know that's coming. I know North Dakota has a big drone industry. Is there someone in your department that is putting together or watching those particular issues, and who might that be?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Mahoney, to my knowledge, we don't have anyone that's pursuing that in great detail. Certainly, those are developments that we're monitoring, but I'm not aware of, at least, of any extensive activity that we're doing at the department to kind of explore the possibilities associated with driverless cars.
Mr. Chair, so you'll be ready for the bill I'm bringing forth this year?
You heard it first?
Look forward to it.
Representative Beard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I enjoyed the presentation. Commissioner Zelle, welcome to the salt mine. We'll look forward to working with you on these things. Mr. Chair, the last 2 years, I had the privilege of chairing this committee, and this is one of those committees, although there's some partisanship to it. Largely, we have a tradition over the last how many years since you and I've been here with Chair Leader and Chair Holberg and others, where we've tried to keep it as bipartisan as possible, and I think that's served the state well. One of the things I'd like to just point to is the Towards Zero Deaths over the last decade. Has been an amazing initiative, going from over 600 deaths a year to less than 300 now. I know that's some of it's been patrol, some of it's been the automobiles that we're buying are much safer, but a lot of it has been MnDOT initiatives, the low-cost, high-impact initiatives where we rebuild intersections or change lighting, straighten out a dangerous curve. Those have been bipartisan in their nature, and I just want you to know that we applaud MnDOT for stepping out of the box and looking for where they can spend a little money to have a high impact, hopefully to avoid impacts, I guess, tongue-in-cheek, but they have had some enormous effects. The other one that had some strong bipartisan support was the whole DBE adventure. I know that was a very prickly situation, but the Commissioner and others involved in the collaborative, Mr. Chair, and I know you were involved in these quiet discussions as well, I think put together a program that can work. It's realistic. It's got timelines on it. It's got mentorship on it. It's trying to bring people to the real world and help them really perform value for the taxpayers. And I want you to know we stand foursquare behind you on that. The other deal on page 21, and by the way, as a publisher in my former life, I want you to know how much I appreciate page numbers, Mr. Peterson, when you put this together. This is like the fifth presentation I've sat through, the first one with page numbers, so you can easily refer to page 21, which oddly enough doesn't have a page number. But one of my favorite projects, the 169-494 interchange, was largely possible because of your last bullet point, money saved extends the number of projects delivered. Thanks to our construction companies, our unions, the way MnDOT has put projects together, Mr. Chairman, we've had some fantastic pricing over the last 4 or 5 years that has enabled MnDOT to deliver a lot more projects than I think were in the original timelines that we looked at even 5 and 6 years ago when we were in angst on the veto override. I just want to compliment MnDOT for using the money prudently and getting as much asphalt and concrete out of a dollar as they possibly could. The last thing I'll comment on is the bipartisan support for the governor's what I always called the Smooth Roads Initiative, but I think he had a longer one that didn't roll off the tongue quite so easy. It ended with better roads, the better roads for Minnesota. Because of some of the money saved and the efficiencies that MnDOT was able to wring out with some of the construction techniques like the fantastic bridge video you just saw, we were able to move several $100 million around. And for the new folks on the committee, you'll learn about the different pots of money and how we have some discretion in moving things from new construction to maintenance and preventative maintenance and so on and so forth. Senator Gimsey and I, at the time, of the party opposite yours, Mr. Chair, we agreed wholeheartedly with the governor's people that was a good initiative, and it has greatly improved the ride on many miles of roads in this state. So I just want to tip my hat to you and say we stand ready to continue with that kind of progress moving forward.
Thank you. Thanks for those comments, Representative Beard. Vice Chair Bernardi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things that I would like to see happen is build on the success of initiatives that MnDOT has done. And I think there's real opportunity to expand the Towards Zero Death as well as the highway safety plans to really provide authentic and real leadership on bike and pedestrian safety and preventing fatalities. I know in the district in which I represent, we just had a recent death from, a couple in both of my counties. People are getting killed by walking and biking on our roadways, and it would be nice to see MnDOT take leadership and really integrating that in planning so that we can reduce it. In Ramsey County alone, we're like 3 times the state average in serious injuries and fatalities. And in the state, it's close to 10%, I think, for pedestrians, and that's a lot. And getting leadership out of the office would be very helpful.
Commissioner.
Chair, Mr. President, thank you for that comment. I would agree, and I think reading the paper in today, it talked about a study, I think it was in Minneapolis, St. Paul, where the really blame is half vehicles, half bicycles, and it really is about education and looking at that carefully, using that kind of 2-0 death model. So high impact investments. So that's thank you for that comment.
Okay. Are there any additional questions or comments? Yes, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Chairman. I live not too far from the Road Research Center, so that the St. Michael Monticello corridor there. And when I was out door knocking, I actually ran into one of your engineers that works up there, and it invited me up for a tour. But I thought maybe it'd be better, not just for myself, to go up and take a look and tour it, because it really is internationally known and quite, just amazing at what they do. But maybe you could set up something for whoever was interested in going and seeing this world-class, amazing transportation innovation up there.
Look at a bus. Go up. Mr. Chair, thank you. I think that everything I've learned about it, and I'm new to it, but that it is something that is looked at by the entire country, and they do incredible research and work on concrete and materials.
Representative O'Neill, I'm glad that you brought that up. There's a number of great field trips that this committee can take. I know one year we went to the MAC and went up in the control tower at MSP, and so if you have ideas either in your district or just things that you would want to actually see hands-on, we certainly can try to arrange those. Summer and the interim tends to be better, but before we get really busy around here in March and April and May, we may be able to do a couple of those. So I would just ask the members and to give me your ideas, and obviously, Commissioner and Mr. Peterson, if you have some things that you think this committee ought to see firsthand, by way of a tour, let me know, and we can do our best to arrange that. Mr. Beard.
Well, Mr. Chairman, having been a chair with a small committee budget, and I know you've got the same thing, there'll probably have to be low-cost, high-impact field trips. I'm pretty sure.
Well, we'll walk or take the bus or bike.
Well, there you go.
So, okay, yes, we have time.
Okay.
Representative Bernardi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Commissioner, I'm interested in, don't have to hear about it now, but the process in which this committee went through. One of the things that MnDOT does a lot of is try to collaborate and work with communities. And I think that focusing on effective processes that produce good results, and stakeholders have really had input from the beginning of the project is super important. And frankly, that's not what engineers have been trained for. And so if you had a positive experience, that would be helpful to bring that down at the community level, because I see that there's a real need for that. And if we did it well, we'd end up with a lot better projects for communities to make them great places to live, rather than having MnDOT come barreling in and just doing a project. So if you've had a great experience on that, I would love to have that replicated, or if you saw improvements that need to be made, getting the resources to help make that happen.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you for that. We'll come back with both some stories and some more conversation on that. I think that's great input, and I think we've got some examples to talk about.
Representative Newberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up. I have spent the last 25 years working on the roads here in the metro area, and I just want to do a shout out and a congratulations and say a thank you and a very good job to the men and women who work on the Highway Helper program. Those people are outstanding, and they deserve our admiration. I just want to say thank you for them, and if you would please somehow express that they are vital and that they're doing an excellent job, and thank you for what they do.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, Representative Howe.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, I truly like to, and I would like to see some assistance in the multimodal area of this, is some help in securing something for our St. Cloud Airport, and another avenue and another venue, and trying to get secure those another airline in there, and making that a true regional airport, and so it would really reduce that stress on the metro as far as bringing those folks from out west, giving them a true another alternative, rather than coming all the way down to the metro to find that air transport out of the west and central Minnesota.
Mr. Chair, Representative, I was something I'm looking forward to learning more. I know there's a great facility, a great airport there, and just needs service.
And Representative Howe, I had the pleasure of meeting with several people from St. Cloud earlier this week or last week, and this issue came up, and I'm very committed to this. I think Allegiant now has some service, but it sure would be good to get something to Chicago, I think, from St. Cloud. And you mentioned people coming from the west. You also have folks, maybe in the northern suburbs that could use that facility as well. So I think it's really important, and I know our mayor in Minneapolis is very interested in really looking at some of these facilities in Rochester, St. Cloud, reliever airports, freight. There's a lot of possibilities there, so I'm really interested in working with you on that. Yes, Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the fact that you brought up the MAC and that Representative Howell brought up another aviation interest. But I'd like to follow up on something, Mr. Commissioner, on something that Representative Newberger was talking about earlier. And my question is very similar in asking the relationship of the MnDOT to the MAC in the same hierarchy as the Met Council. Is there a flow chart per se?
Mr. Chair, I'm looking to Scott Peterson because I haven't seen the flow chart, but that's a great question.
Mr. Chairman and members, to my knowledge, MnDOT merely is basically a pass-through for federal funding for the MAC, and we don't really have any ability to exercise authority over the MAC.
And I'll call, thank you, and I'll call on Representative Beard as a pilot, and I will also say the chair of our once aviation subcommittee of this committee. I think one of the legislative experts on all things aviation. But Representative Anderson, we will have a similar overview hearing with the MAC, again, probably sometime in early February. But Representative Beard, did you want to take a crack at that?
Just a brief comment for the members, because the funding for MnDOT's Department of Aeronautics is entirely self-contained from user fees, and they are a pass-through mechanism for the Federal Aviation Trust Fund as well. They manage, I actually thought, Mr. Peter, it was 136 airports. You might have lost one, but they manage all but the 7 that are in the MAC system. The MAC is also a self-contained unit that gets no general fund tax dollars. It generates all of its own revenue from parking concessions and other fees at the airports, the 7 airports it operates. I think that MnDOT passes through something in the neighborhood of $150,000 a year from the Federal Aviation Trust Fund as sort of a token maintenance payment to the MAC for each of their 6 reliever airports, maybe a few other dollars as well. But they actually run 2 separate systems, but have coffee regularly just to talk about things so that they don't get into overlap or duplicity. Duplication is a better word, I guess, than duplicity. Excuse me. So, yes, they are. MnDOT runs one of the best aviation systems in the United States, in my opinion, and they run and fund them from user fees. MAC has their own 7, and their worlds run in parallel universes and kind of cooperate with each other, but they have no policy effect on one another.
And go ahead.
Mr. Chow, just saying, I as commissioner, I have a seat or a designee on the MAC board, so there's a pretty close relationship.
Yes.
There.
And Representative Anderson, to muddy the waters even more, the Met Council even has budgetary oversight responsibilities for the MAC. So we will get all of this straight, I guarantee, for both people who have been on this committee and for new folks. There's really a lot of these are, your questions, Representative Newberger's questions are all really helpful and important, and we want to get everybody on the same page and sort of the jurisdictional responsibilities of all these entities, who does what, where the money comes from, where the overlaps. These are important questions, and I'm glad you're asking them. Okay, yes, Mr. Peterson.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I sent my trusty research assistant, Kevin Gutnick, out to get some updated information on the pavement question that was asked by Representative Runbeck and Representative Benson. And so just for the committee's information here, we currently have 700 miles of a trunk highway system, so of the roughly 12,000 miles in the trunk highway system, we have 700 miles currently in poor condition. We project there'll be 1,900 miles in poor condition by 2020. That's despite plans to invest more than $900 million into pavements during that same time period. And the $357 million worth of spending, that's part of the Better Roads for Better Minnesota program, will improve 500 miles of pavement.
Okay. So that's helpful, and we'll also get the report out to you. And just to be clear, so this is trunk highway. As we learned today, there's also county state aid highways. There's municipal highways. So there's really different categories of highways and where the money comes from to fund them. Again, so this is related to the trunk highway system, Mr. Peterson, correct? Okay. So that accounts for some of the question about the number of 137,000 versus. So that's very helpful. I appreciate your being on the ball on that so quickly. But again, members, we're going to at least have part of a hearing day simply on this pavement question, because I think it's important, and I think the questions of the committee today, both committees, policy and finance, we had a lot on that, and so we'll spend some time on it. Any final questions or comments from the committee? Well, Commissioner Zelle, I just wanted to thank you and congratulate you. You know, you are at the helm of a very important agency, and I think you're the guy for the job here, and we really appreciate your taking time on your second day for this, and look forward to a productive relationship with you and members of our committee from both parties. And again, appreciate so much taking your time today. And so before I adjourn, I just wanted to remind members of the Transportation Finance Committee that we will have a hearing tomorrow at 10 o'clock. This is sort of a transit day. We'll be looking at 3 key transit agencies in the metropolitan area. And again, we have a Greater Minnesota Transit component, which MnDOT touched on today. And I would encourage you, if you have remaining questions after tomorrow, once you hear about the metropolitan transit situation, if you have other questions about Greater Minnesota Transit, please direct those to MnDOT. And again, this just kind of scratched the surface here, and I know that many of you will have questions. I know that Mr. Peterson will be coming around and talking to members of the committee, so jot down your questions when you have them and ask Mr. Peterson or other members of the MnDOT staff. And so with that, we will adjourn our meeting today. Thank you very much, members.
Thank you.